She's got us on live already.
Yeah.
Are we on live already?
Yes.
Here we are playing around, and we're on live. It's a good thing I didn't say something really crazy. Great to have you guys with us on Sensible Prepper live. Prepper School. Great to have Robbie Wheaton with us. And Robbie's been a gunsmith for over 20 years. Also owns Wheaton Arms and has some of the best Glock, in fact, the best flat face trigger for your Glock. It actually makes the trigger work really well. So, and also Sarah Mack is over monitoring comments. And if you have questions, you can leave them at any time. We'll take a break and you can ask, she'll send the questions to us. So with all that being said, Robbie got here early and that really just messed up my mojo. No, not really. Glad to have Robbie with us as always. So guys, we're going to talk today about something. We've got, obviously, we have a lot coming up this fall with the elections. And the potential for civil unrest is really high, no matter who wins. And, we're already seeing a lot of protests at the universities with the Palestinian Gaza thing against anti-Semitic. And, this is just things that are going on. We seem to continually have some kind of cause that is just driving these protests. Some of the protests are more violent than others, and some of the causes. Climate change has been a huge disruption a lot of times with commerce, people sitting in the street. We see a lot of crazy stuff that's going on, but pretty benign as far as that goes, except some of the priceless works of art having paint thrown on them, things like that. It's really kind of funny. It's almost like they're trying, when it's not that they are, and it's not funny, but they're really trying to destroy our culture, our foundations. And it's, there's nothing wrong with change. There's nothing wrong with progress. In fact, we need progress. But when you try to force progress and you destroy a culture and traditions in a rapid way, it leads to violence for both sides. And so with the elections coming up, honestly, with January 6th, a lot of people are very upset about the way the election went last time. Mm-hmm. Even though January 6th was really kind of a staged event or instigated and well beyond anything that was going on there. I personally had a phone call from the FBI asking if I was there, which we weren't, thank goodness, at that time. But there was a lot of resources put toward January 6th. There's a lot of concern. Trump is, he's in court right now under criminal charges. And, and the fact is, he can go to any major city and have a massive turnout. Whether you like Trump or not, it's just what it is. And he's very popular with, more conservative sects. And so we've got a lot of division in the country.
SECTS or SEX?
It's whatever you want to say. I mean, I don't know if Stormy was around or what, but, And, a lot of things are just, there are players behind the scenes that are funding a lot of this. A lot of these people that are protesting really don't know what's really going on. Had a real nice conversation with a young lady the other day, my nephew, and he got started talking about it, and his girlfriend on it. She goes to a university that's local, and she started asking questions, and she really had no idea. She just had a bias toward one side, and and two, a lot of times these people don't want to hear, and so it's gotten to be a strong division. Mm-hmm. And there are divisions in the divisions, and this is all honestly manipulated. We all know that George Soros is just trying. He's funding a lot of this. There are other players that are happening, that are involved. But all that, there's nothing we can really do about a lot of that stuff. Right. There's nothing you can really do. If the federal government would step up, maybe we could, do something to stop some of this, and hopefully they will. But that's nothing that we can help. So what we want to talk about is what we can do. And we can find ourselves in a really bad situation. And we've seen it before. Saw it with George Floyd and the riots, the BLM, Antifa. You have now this Gaza deal, COVID. We've seen what they are capable of doing. And really, because of fear, really stopping the country.
Yeah.
And right or wrong or indifferent, these things can just happen. And, what are we going to do about it? It's funny because a lot of people, they still don't get it. They still don't understand why, we need to kind of be a little more prepared. And it really just doesn't make a lot of sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what you can do to help your family, help you, and to be better protected. Now, before we get started, I do want to talk a minute about our sponsors. And Exotac makes some of the best, not some of the best, they make the best fire starters out on the market. They're extremely well done. And these are designed and made in Winder, Georgia. And I've been down to that facility. It is phenomenal. And Rob, that is the owner, is just he's really a genius, and he puts his designs together and makes some of the coolest fire starters. Here's the thing: fire is it's primeval. I mean, it's something we have to have for survival, and we've lost the art of fire making, and because we have so many conveniences. So you really need to have a fire kit. Fire will boil your water. It'll cook your food. It gives you warmth. It gives you light. And it keeps predators at bay. It is really basic for survival. So get yourself a good fire starter kit. I have a fire kit, and I can get to all my tools. And Exotac gives 20% off using Sootch 20 with the link down below in the description. And we really appreciate Exotac. So with that being said, we've got some things ahead of us, I think.
We do. We've got the elections coming up in November, and that's I think that could be a real tipping point for our country. We've got on one side, if we're looking at it as far as sides go, on one side we have Joe Biden, the liberals, everybody that supports the Democrats. On the other side we have Trump, all the people that support Trump or don't support Biden and are looking for somebody to vote for.
And that goes really with people that don't even like Biden, but they don't like Trump.
Right.
So,
And then we have Kennedy, and Kennedy is the potential disruptor that's running. He has been a Democrat. His family have been Democrats, all the way back to John F. Kennedy, and before. So Kennedy is a Democrat, but there's already a Democratic incumbent, so he's having to run on an independent ticket. And Kennedy has a lot of things that he's saying that appeal to a lot of people on both sides of the fence. And I think he could be a real disruptor in this election that could pull votes both from the Democrats as well as the Republicans, and really could potentially sway this election.
Now, one thing I do want to say about Kennedy, I was really watching him, and I kind of like it. I mean, I liked a lot of the things he said. One of the things, though, that really just put a stop to it is he said that he's big about the Second Amendment. He believes we need to maintain the Second Amendment. But he said if Congress votes on an assault weapons bill and there's a consensus, he'll sign. So when he said that, I was like,
Yeah.
But it's still, like Robbie said, it's definitely a potential disruptor, kind of like Ross Perot back in the day. But there's a number of things too that are at play here is our economy.
That's right.
And right now, food prices are crazy. Fuel, gas prices, we've seen that.
Out
you
of
were talking
control.
about insurance.
Yeah. Car insurance, home insurance, it's out of control.
Yeah.
Inflation overall within our country. Our dollar is worth realistically 40% less than it was 4 years ago. And that impacts everyone, every single person in this country that impacts.
Right. So, there are a lot of factors that are going on right now. I mean, I said this recently a number of times, but in fact, silver reached a really high level this weekend. It was around, I think it hit $32 an ounce.
Wow.
And so that is getting up there to some of the highest ever. And then, of course, gold is really high right now as well, too, and hitting those areas that have been the highest in history with gold.
And just housing, the cost of housing. If you're a young person coming out of college, looking to start your career, start your life, and move out on your own, get an apartment or a small house, your first home, your starter home, it's almost financially impossible for you to do that right now. It's the housing costs, even here in South Carolina, have went up astronomically in the last few years.
Well, they say that South Carolina is one of the top 3 in housing prices.
Yeah.
And the thing is, people, the whole point of that is that people, they get disgruntled, they get upset, they don't have the funds they need. We've gotten used to a standard of living, and and it's just gotten more difficult, which leads to issues and problems. And so first thing is on the list that is riots. I mean, not riots, is protest, just standard protest. And we're seeing a lot of protest at the universities, and peaceful protest, we're guaranteed that in the Constitution. I mean, that is a basic human right, is to be able to stand and to protest. And there's nothing wrong with that. As long as it's not disruptive and, you're able to get your point across. And when I say disruptive, I don't mean that it's maybe loud or they're doing, but when it blocks commerce and traffic, and it blocks students from being able to go into the universities because of their ethnicity, it's really a major problem. It's against our civil rights, for one thing, which is a big deal. And so, can you imagine here they're blocking these people that are of Israeli descent, or they're Jews, which there are more Jews in New York than there are in Israel. And so you have to, could you imagine that if some crowd got up and started blocking Black people from going to college? Do you think that everything would be? No, it would be fixed just like this. And I would be in line to stop that immediately. But the thing is there are protests. There's blocked traffic. There's blocked commerce. Sometimes with this climate thing, and that's another part of protest, is that, a lot of these places, are they're sitting in the road. They're blocking people from going home. They're just, it's a peaceful protest in a sense, but it's blocking commerce.
Right.
I mean, that's, and so these are the small forms of protest that we're seeing, but we're seeing it more and more, and we're seeing more and more reasons for protest. And so the next level are riots, especially with the George Floyd situation. There was a lot of anger. There was a lot that was going on. There was a lot of disruption. There was theft. There was looting. The sad thing is right now is these groups that are going into regular businesses, even not under protest,
right,
just going in and taking stuff. You want to know why your insurance is going up? Somebody's got to pay for that. It was funny. I saw somebody was talking about it. It may have been AOC, and she said, "Well, that insurance will cover that." Insurance comes out of us. I mean, it affects us. The insurance companies just don't have this giant stash of cash, and they just like to pay out, and it doesn't affect anything. It affects you and me. It affects us on an everyday level. So what's really is happening is these stores are getting broken into and looted, and insurance comes in and pays, and now we're paying for it. So you're paying for those that are looting.
That's right.
In the sense,
it's just going to drive everyone's premiums up across the country
in every area.
Yep.
So these things do affect us. Now, one thing that's a big one is arson. Arson. There's a lot of places they would burn cars. They'd burn even police cars on fire. Burn buildings, cities. Those cities have to then rebuild.
Right.
And there you go. Then the prices go up and up. Retail businesses just leave areas, just leave major cities for the people that they just don't have anything. So that also causes a lot of people that are disgruntled and very upset. Okay, so when these things happen, it's like, not only do you have the protest and a lot of violence going on, but it opens up areas that the law enforcement has to focus on one place. So that means that there's areas of opportunity for regular criminals, for assaults, for burglaries, for robberies, for vandalism.
Yep.
It just opens
Absolutely.
up many doors. And here's the thing, guys, that really was funny to me is you have these, especially right now with Gaza going on, the Gaza protest, is you have these things going on. And these universities that are soft, that don't push anything. They just kind of let them do what they do. They last for on and on. But when a university comes in and says, that's it, we're done, it takes, boom, it's done and it's cleaned up. So really, it's contingent on law enforcement doing their job. Now, let me back that up. It's not the guys on the street. It's not the law enforcement. They would love to handle things. I can promise you on most cases. It's the hierarchy that's above them. It's their city councils. It's their, even college presidents or whatever that are holding back law enforcement from just restoring order. But then once things get out of hand, you've got law enforcement restoring order, and then you have vulnerability around it. So one of the things I'm really concerned about, especially if I live in a major city. Now, let's talk about that. You've got, one of the big things a lot of people think is, oh, well, I don't live in a big city. When we had a lot of the George Floyd issues in smaller rural towns, in towns. Now, if you live way out in the country, still, it's going to be some disruption.
Well, what you see a lot of times is a trickle-down effect. You'll see these riots, these big disruptions in your major cities. That's where they tend to start. But then those riots and disruptions start to trickle down into your smaller cities, into your rural areas. And you will start to see things spread just like we did during George Floyd. We have a moderate-sized city not far from us. And, but we have Atlanta and we have Charlotte 2 hours to the east and 2 hours to the west of us. We saw major disruptions in both of those cities, which are just 2 hours away. But our little small city here, we started seeing disruptions, civil unrest, people blocking the streets. We started seeing that pretty early on, even in our little city here that's near us as well.
Yeah. It's Greenville, South Carolina, which actually has grown into a pretty fast-growing city. Yeah. But, again, some of the smaller cities. Now, how does that affect us? Well, let's say you have children that go to school. Let's say you work in a town. Let's say you buy your groceries in a town.
You just have to travel through there to get somewhere.
Yeah, you've just got to get through there. Maybe you're on the road. You're going somewhere. The thing is it affects our everyday lives. You may live out, but you still need to do the things you do. So, and then, of course, this is one thing, too, is what is international perception of the U.S.? We see weakening of the U.S., which a lot of times that encourages some of the bad players to step it up.
I mean, you look at what's happening in Ukraine, you look at what's happening in Israel. If the U.S. was viewed as a very strong country and a very strong government right now, I don't believe we'd be seeing either of those issues. But with the U.S. being viewed as very weak by the world at this point, that really gives these other countries that want to do things, that want to attack other countries, almost free reign to do as they please.
And really, it encourages foreign groups to get involved in it.
Yeah.
They want for us to be very unstable. And we're seeing it with all the different cyber attacks and things like that are constantly going into our infrastructure. So,
people fuss all the time about the U.S. being the world police. The U.S. is the world police. They take care of things all over the world. The U.S. is almost like the school teacher in the classroom, right? The school teacher's in the classroom's quiet, everyone's listening, everyone's paying attention, or at least they're not being disruptive. As soon as the teacher walks out of the room, the class goes wild, it goes crazy, right? When the teacher, the strong person, walks back into the room, class is quiet again. The world right now is waiting on the teacher to walk back in the room.
That's a good analogy, actually.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we're gonna go to some questions here in just a second. I want to go ahead and give Sarah Mack a heads up, but a lot of times, though, this leads to martial law, and one of the things about martial law, it can be good and bad. I did a video about this a while back, and most people view martial law as totalitarian government coming in and making people having a curfew and police on every corner, maybe the National Guard coming in, restoring order, but putting a lot of rules and regulations, which is definitely can be bad. And one thing too is we talked about this as well just recently. about things that FEMA, and I said FEMA, but it would more or less be the Department of Homeland Security or even your local and state governments, things that they legally can confiscate. And so that's one of the things about martial law that a lot of people get nervous about, because they may say, hey, you've got extra food. We need extra food. We have a food bank down here. We have Red Cross down here. And they come in and they start taking your surplus. They'll leave you with what you need right now, but they'll take everything that you've planned for, worked hard for, and then it can be relocated and used with a broader, unprepared mass that was just not willing to prepare when you've worked hard. One of the things I thought, and this is one thing that would infuriate me, is that they take my supplies, and then I have to go stand in line to get a small portion of my own supplies. I'm thinking, but martial law, we saw what happened down at Katrina. It was a chaos down there. And then they went around and started picking up the guns. So when riots and if it gets on a grand scale, they can call for martial law. And then, we've got to deal with that. The other side of martial law, actually, a benefit is we've got these riots going on and people are being hurt and killed, instead of the police standing there on the corners watching it, which also infuriates me. Mm-hmm. How they can stand there and let somebody get attacked and they don't do anything. They are going to be more in control to stop the civil unrest. And then hopefully, that'll lead to a relief of martial law. Right. And then we can go back to normal business. A lot of people are concerned that once we bring in martial law, and it's according to the circumstance, that it could be indefinite. And that's one thing we definitely don't want. But to just come in, restore order, and then, not go door to door and take all your stuff, is a benefit in a sense, but it's how it's handled. Okay, let's go to some questions.
Ernie Andrews asks, when using pepper spray, what precautions should I take, knowing wind direction, how close to myself?
Right. First thing is you aim for the eyes. Aim directly for the eyes, and you'll get the face. And that is the number one thing. Some people just think you can just spray it, and you can, and it can get you, can't it? Yes, it Robbie can. And I know about that.
Yes, it can.
Pepper spray, but yes, wind direction is important. Also, how you store it, and you don't want it to go off in your car. I'll tell you one thing about bear spray, and I've heard about 3 incidences about this, is that little tab that blocks it, falls out.
Yeah. And
my son and some guys were going hiking recently, and he had the bear spray in his backpack, and one of the kids got in the backpack and set the thing off on his own, on himself. And, that can happen. So be careful. But bear spray, and we're going to get into that, especially coming up with some of the when you find yourself in a riot. Bear spray or pepper spray are mandatory to have. Having a gun or a big knife or stick or something like that is you're going to get that ended up used on you if you're not careful. So to me, pepper spray is a great way, especially if you're being accosted, is to get people back. The other issue is that they are using the same tactics.
Right.
A lot of the protesters or whatever are now using, but that is one thing I highly recommend. And I have not always been a pepper spray fan.
Yeah.
But when I watched the riots and I saw what happened, I became a huge proponent of having pepper spray.
But it's like the little keychain pepper sprays that you can buy in all your convenience stores and stuff. I'm not a fan of that stuff. It shoots a little bitty tiny stream for about 2.5, 3 seconds, and then the can's empty. You generally are going to need more than that, just because of being able to aim. If you're shooting a steady stream, you don't have the ability to be able to aim it. So you're going to shoot that stream. You're like, oh, I need to be over. Well, I'm already out.
Right.
So, I'm a big fan of, like Don was saying, the big cans, the pepper sprays and the bear sprays that come in a big can that's going to give you a fog or a cloud that's going to disperse from it. It's much easier to impact someone with that than it is with that little bitty stream.
Now, Saber Red is what I carry. That's and it's actually a can about like this.
Yep.
A little more expensive, but keep it. And one thing you want to be careful of is don't leave it in your vehicle when it's really hot, or if you do, put it somewhere it's going to insulate it to keep it cooler. So, and then also I really like the little Kimber pepper blasters.
Yeah.
And it's like a little gun, and it has 2 really long, strong blasts with it. Those things are great. So the Kimber pepper blaster or Saber Red are my favorites. I think John Correa from Active Self Protection was talking about Palm. It's a Palm pepper spray, and I have some of those, and those are good as well.
The only downside to using the Kimber one, it does look like a gun, and it could be perceived as a gun. So you could potentially take a less lethal situation and escalate it to a lethal situation with something that looks like a gun, even though it is a less lethal item.
But it is red. But still, you're right. Okay.
I'm all right. Says looking to understand how to select a location for an off-site supply cache, like a storage garage, balance close proximity, risk versus remote, etc. Thank you.
The one thing we do is we have a storage unit, a buddy of mine, and we have friends that also do this, and we keep survival supplies, certain survival supplies that are not affected as much by heat, extreme temperature changes. But we keep those in one, and you've got to be careful because you don't want one that's in an urban area that could be overrun and people taking stuff out. But that is to me one of the best ways because it's fenced in, it's monitored. There's some good things. There are some downsides again to where they can be broken into. But having a survival cache that way, you've got something that is actually people are in and out. It's not like it's just sitting out in the middle of the woods. Have a girl, not a girlfriend, a friend of ours that they had some property, and her son took his camper and put it out on their property, and he wasn't staying there. He just put it out there, and she told him, she goes, "Have you got a lock on that camper?" And he said, "Nah, I don't need it. Nobody can find it." Sure enough, it was stolen. So, and Robbie knows about trailers being stolen too, but having a very secure location is really going to be your critical part. Unless it's well camouflaged. So in outbuildings, people tend to gravitate toward those to break in, see what's in them.
That's right.
They want to get to them. And if you think it's real remote, just think about it this way. Meth and drugs and everything else are all over the country. And there are people that are super addicted to them in some of the most remote places you can imagine. And they will find things. So to me, that's why I really like the storage unit cache.
Well, to go along with that, if you're gonna make drugs, be it meth or weed or whatever, you're probably not going to do that in an urban area.
Right.
You're going to go to a remote area where people aren't, they're not looking for you to be out there to make stuff like that. So, that's one thing to be aware of. If you do have property that's out, is to keep an eye out for things like that, to make sure that people aren't using your property for nefarious purposes.
Right. That's true. We got one more, and then we'll go back to, we're going to get into things you need to consider, precautions.
Nick Lideria asks, "Good afternoon, guys. Do you think we will actually have elections? I have a feeling we won't."
Anything's possible. I really think that we will. I don't know that the way they're doing. It seems like Trump's starting to kind of get free from some of this. A lot of the testimony that was held against him, they're even bringing up a motion just to dismiss it because it's just bogus. And I really feel that it is all bogus. But the one thing is they're really trying their best to lock him into something, and which is scary in itself that we have political persecution going on. And let me just say this. If Donald Trump goes to jail, there is a potential for greater violence than if he just loses the election. But the second part of losing the election is after January, or after this last election, people don't trust the voting system. Mm-hmm. And so that is one of our very basic rights that is very sacred, to have the right to vote. And if you feel like that your vote is not counting, and that this election proved that as well, if enough people feel that way, the big deal is, and I don't think people really understand it this way, if the left, they're all emotional and freaking out about every little thing. If you get the right pissed off enough to where they're going to take a stand, and they just are like, you know what, we're done. This isn't working. We're finished. That's when we're looking at something major.
Yep.
Because here's the thing. They've got their causes, and that's whatever. And a lot of it is, again, funded. So they're kind of weak and just out creating problems. But when you get a cause on the right, a sacred cause to go, you know what, we're done with this. That to me scares me probably more than anything.
Right.
So let's just hope that this doesn't happen. Okay, we're going to move forward. Now let's talk about precautions, because okay, so let's say these things are going to happen, and to what extent, we'll see. I mean, I'm not just saying it's going to be total chaos across the country. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it. I'm not saying it won't, but I think the chances of that are actually fairly slim.
Maybe.
And according to the situation,
right?
According to the situation. Right. So let's look at some things about it. First off, where do you go every day? What do you do? Your kids go to school, you're at work, maybe you work from home, but maybe you have to commute into work, into a city or a larger city, a larger town, where you do your shopping, when you go out to eat, when you do the things you do. I highly recommend during this time of the election and watching what's going on is to make some plans ahead of time, make some precautions. Go, you know what? Let's have some extra food in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just have some, let's fill our pantry up. We don't have to be crazy preppers, which would be a better option. But,
right.
Let's say you don't want to do that. Fill up your pantry. Give yourself at least a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, a month. Give yourself some food and have it ready. And guys, if it comes up and nothing happens, then eat.
Right.
And you save money on, going out or whatever.
Save yourself a few trips to the grocery store.
Right.
Exactly.
Or, and make sure that there's some things. This is what I do. Maybe, you're like, man, my bourbon bottle is getting kind of low. I need to make sure I fill it up. Go ahead and check those things that you typically do on an everyday basis that you really want, that you really need to do, and just plan ahead of time. Just pre-plan. Then get yourself in a good situation. For those of us who are preppers, there are sometimes some things that we don't stock up on as much, or maybe toilet paper, which hopefully if you're a prepper, you got a lot of toilet paper, but maybe there's some things that you need to kind of consider and go, you know what, I really need this, and I'm going to make myself vulnerable to go out into a situation. So first thing is make sure that you're aware of what's going on. You kind of make some plans around it.
Go ahead and splurge on that bidet you've been thinking about.
Yeah, you got that bidet, so you don't have to worry about the toilet paper. But having those things, maybe you need some Advil. Check your medicine cabinets. You go ahead and make sure your prescriptions are up if you depend on prescriptions. Those kind of things. Go ahead and do those ahead of time and get yourself just in a little better shape. And that's going to be a big deal for this next month. And it really gives you, and that's in November. Just give yourself some time to plan for it. And then when it happens, you're in good shape. And once that's done, you can roll into December and everything's great.
Right.
Or you can roll into December and go, thank God I did all this.
Well, one thing to really kind of consider, especially with the elections coming up in November, is maybe get your Christmas shopping and stuff done a little bit early this year.
Yeah.
That way you're not out at, the big box stores, at the malls and things like that, trying to do your shopping right after the election when there could be potentially civil unrest. Go ahead and get your shopping done early this year, so you're finished with that ahead of time.
Right. But yeah, I'm going to tell you guys, if Donald Trump gets into office, there's going to be some major chaos with the left. There's going to be a lot of temper tantrums that are going to be thrown. How bad those temper tantrums get, we'll see.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's exactly what it is. It's a bunch of temper tantrums. These children should have been spanked when they were kids. Okay. And again, location. Location is very important. If you're in a more rural area, you're going to have a lot more insulation from stuff. But again, you may have to go to the cities to buy stuff. So go ahead, even if you live out in the middle of the country and you're like, well, I'm not worried about it. Well, make sure you don't go, oops, I need this. And we got to have it for Aunt Susie's birthday party. And we got to get there and I've got to have it. So just do those things. Home security. Obviously, that's a no-brainer. You should be doing that anyway with the rise in crime. Especially what we've seen with a lot of the border, a lot of prisons down in Central America. They just released them and let them go, and they're here. So we're getting the dregs, and we're getting some good people too. But we need to do it legally. But here, home security with, of course, obviously light. Light is your number one security tool. You want to have light. Put up some really good motion sensing lights. And then think about alarms. One thing that we have that we love is our driveway alarm. And we have a fairly long driveway. Anybody comes across it, it doesn't matter. Anybody that walks through it, anybody that drives through it, we are immediately notified. and the dogs even know where
Mm-hmm.
this is going. So make sure you have some different type of alarms, but then have a home security system if you got it. And guys, there's a bazillion choices. You don't have to have a big expensive security system. You can have something smaller,
Right.
and something online, and get a nice little security system set up that will deter people.
One of the really nice things I think one of the deterrents with cameras in the past with people have been the fact that you had to run wires through your attic or through the walls, and they were very invasive to try and install cameras in your home. But with all of the wireless cameras that are available nowadays, and it is reliable and durable as the wireless cameras are, it's really, and even battery life, you can get them that are solar powered. It's really almost a no-brainer now. You're doing yourself a disservice not to have cameras around your
Yeah,
home.
at least a Ring camera,
Right.
even if you live in an apartment or whatever,
Yep.
and it'll notify you on your phone immediately, so you know when there's something going on. And especially if you have kids at home, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh crap. And so we are big proponents of having a camera system that is attached to online.
Yep.
And again, you don't have to hardwire them. So, and you can hardwire them, but that you don't. And so, but having a good security system with alarms can deter crime. And you can just put a sign up a lot of times, and that will deter crime.
Yep.
And so those are big ones. Of course, make sure your doors are locked. Lock your doors. Make sure if there's something that's has been a problem, maybe it's your house and this door doesn't really seem to, you can kind of push it and it comes unlocked. Well, then fix it.
One of the big ones, make sure you lock the doors on your vehicles, even at your house.
Yeah.
So many people, I have guys call me fairly regularly that their car got broke into in their driveway. They left their gun in their car and it got stolen out of their vehicle.
And they left the door unlocked.
With the door unlocked, with the gun in the car, in their driveway, because that's your safe space, right? That's your home. People aren't gonna come to your house and break into your stuff. You live in a rural area, it's not gonna happen. It happens. Listen, it happens all the time. It happens every day. Don't leave valuables in your vehicle, and lock your vehicles in your driveway. Two of the top two things that I could give you as far as advice. Yeah. Lock your vehicles and don't leave valuables in your vehicle, even in your home, at your driveway.
I'll tell you something interesting. I have a friend of mine that works at a club, and he said that there's a new thing they're doing where a car's sitting and another car will pull up right beside it, really close. And one guy in the back seat will roll his window down, bust the window in the car, so you can't really see what's going on. And then he crawls through, gets stuff, and then crawls back out. So they can be very ingenious a lot of times. So yeah, that's but they can break through your glass. Okay. Of course, we have firearms. Firearms are your last resort. That can cause civil and criminal charges. So you want to make sure that you're in good shape. But while you're in your vehicle, it's also an issue. Having firearms in your vehicle, it should be a last resort. Pulling one out, shooting someone. There is a lot of stuff. Even if the roads are blocked and you got people beating on your car. We just saw where Greg Abbott pardoned that guy who was just defending himself against somebody that had an AK-47. And so there's a lot of consequences that can happen there. So make sure that if you have a firearm, and you guys know I am all about self-defense with firearms, but that is not the end all. The problem is a lot of people have a gun and, it's just like having a hammer and everything's a nail. So have other options. That's why pepper spray is very important. Or some other form to be able to, signify something that's non-lethal, even if it's a flashlight.
Yeah, that's right.
One thing about a flashlight, especially a good size flashlight, you can take it this way. You can use it as an impact tool. Just gives you more advantages. So always have a flashlight, and it gives you light. Okay. Stay home during this time. Just stay home. Don't get out and around. But there is possibility someone could come to your home. So make sure you build your security up. When it comes around to vehicles, avoid it. Just avoid going in those directions. Watch your local news. My father-in-law one time during some of the riots, he was driving down the road in downtown Chattanooga, Tennessee, driving to work, and was stopped at a big protest going right in front of him. He had no idea that was going on. One of his buddies said, "Hey, avoid this road over here. There's a protest." He goes, "Yeah, I'm in the middle of it." And it passed, and he was able to get by. But that's not always the case, which we've seen that a number of times. So be aware of what areas are in. Get on your local news. That's one thing that I've started really kind of paying attention to.
Yep.
instead of just this national news, is find out what's going on in your area and be careful. Get to know law enforcement. And that's one big plus for Robbie and I both is we have gotten to know, we have friends that are in law enforcement local that are right around. And I've had them call me directly and say, hey, Don, this is going on. This is happening. So in fact, Sarah Mack was coming home from work one night and it was right through an area they were having protest. And my buddy called me and I took off and was able to get down there, of course, where the problem was, but she took another route and was fine. So, be aware of what's going on, especially with your kids and your wife, even yourself. Make sure you have a full tank of gas. Again, lock your doors. If you have bumper stickers, especially political bumper stickers, I'm all about having freedom of speech, but that's going to draw attention if you're
I'm
not
also
careful.
all about not standing out.
Yeah, and gray man. Situational awareness, which goes with everything, knowing what's going on around you, is very important. We've been over that a number of times, but just not paranoid, but just knowing things are going. Don't be in condition white, where you're on your phone, standing there in the middle of the mall, and you don't know anything's going on around you, and then all of a sudden, you find yourself in a situation.
Or sitting there at a red light for a minute and a half, looking at your phone and don't realize the light's green while everybody's
that too.
Pet peeve. Sorry, I'll climb off my soapbox.
That burns me up as well. Okay, have a plan to abandon your vehicle. Now you're like, dude, I'm not leaving my vehicle. This is a $50,000 car. I'm not walking away from it. Have a plan to abandon your vehicle. It may be that $50,000 car with you dead on the side of the road. So it's not worth that. And we have insurance, like we talked about earlier. But have a plan. Have a go bag in your car at all times. That's one thing we always do. Have a go bag, a get home bag in your vehicle. If you want to know what a get home bag is, we have videos about it, a number of them. So that is a big, big thing for my kids, for my wife. Everybody has a bug out bag or a go bag, get home bag, supplies, things. Have your tools for security in there as well. And of course, obviously, if you are a concealed carry holder, carry your firearm. Not only just for you, but for others that could face situations. Carry your firearm. You could save a life. Street survival, gray man.
Yep.
Just gray man. Avoid confrontations. Keep yourself, don't stare at people and look, and just avoid eye contact, move with purpose, get to a situation. I'm going to go ahead and give you a heads up. We're going to go to some questions. Well, let's finish this out and then we'll go to questions because we're almost getting there. Avoid confrontation. Your communication skills are very important. And when I say communication, that means when somebody comes up to you and is all going to buff up, just
de-escalate.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
De-escalate. Now, Robbie probably won't have as much trouble with that because he's a big guy. And sometimes people pick that out.
They do.
They'll pick that out.
But like you said, communication skills are key. Being able to de-escalate a situation, to be able to talk a situation down. You're always better off to avoid a violent situation than you are to be involved in a violent situation. Things can get out of hand really quickly. And if you can de-escalate a situation and get out of that without violence, you're always better off. Just not only from a physical standpoint, but from a legal standpoint. If you can avoid violence, you're always going to be much better off to try and avoid it. So, for me, being able to talk down a potentially violent situation, get myself out of that situation, get my family out of that situation is always going to be better than becoming involved in a violent situation.
And like road rage, apply that to road rage. Don't escalate. Once you escalate a situation, let's say somebody cuts you off and they're yelling at you and you start yelling back and you get up on their bumper and you're like doing this, you've escalated it. You have taken away your right to use lethal force in a situation, or at least if it goes to court, you're going to have a lot more trouble.
That's right.
So and I know, guys, I get burned up sometimes as well, but I just stop and go, okay, I have a gun in the car. I'm going to calm down. And then I just let it go. And so, that is one thing, it's real because boy, you have a gun on in your glove box, you're on your hip and you can be Mr. Big Shot. I've got a gun. Then you're feeding into it, and don't do that. Never walk alone. If you're in a street, urban situation or whatever, there may not be violence going on right around you, but it can find you. Mm-hmm. So don't walk alone, walk at least with somebody or a group. and especially if things start ratcheting up. One thing I do want to mention too, guys, is if you live in a big city and is prone to violence sometimes, if you've been involved in different things that come through, plan a weekend out of town or plan a few days. Just go, you know what, we're going to take, let's see, November. I think the elections are on the 5th.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take that week off, or let's take a couple of days off right after that. And let's go to my mother-in-law's. Then you,
Well, and one of the really big ones that a lot of people that live in urban areas don't consider are parking garages. Parking garages can be a very, very dangerous area. If you can at all avoid it, A, don't park in a parking garage. B, if you have to park in a parking garage, don't go to that parking garage alone. Make sure that you have somebody with you. There's truth, there's safety in numbers. If you're going to the parking garage to get your vehicle, go to the parking garage with a buddy or a friend.
Or security, if there's security in your building.
That's right. Make sure there's at least 2 of you going to the parking garage.
Yeah, because that's a covered area. It's concealed. It's definitely a place that a lot of criminals like to use. Okay, so and then carry your pepper spray with you. Carry, the flashlight. If you can carry your concealed carry, make sure you have that on you. Make sure that you're, but have non-lethal options. Now, or even personal alarms. That was one thing I just thought, if you have some kind of alarm and you can set that thing off, it draws attention to you. People are looking. They want to go, what is that noise? And they look, and it could avoid a situation. Now, one thing is, if you're at work and something happens, if your kids are at school and something's going on, or you're somewhere, find a safe haven. Find a place that you can stay, maybe just kind of wait till the situation kind of de-escalates. And don't go out at night if you can help it. Night's going to be your biggest problem. Okay, let's so those are the things just to kind of put together and to really think through if things start to ratchet up. Again, it's according to your location, it's according to where you are. So let's go to some questions, and we'll finish them out.
Sonia Bayham asked, have you read The Fourth Turning or The Fourth Turning is Here?
No, I haven't. I've heard about it, but no, I haven't read that. But I will check it out because I am a avid reader, and I love all the different, especially some of the really solid books on these subjects. So yeah, Fourth Turning.
Mark Bates says, what do you think about keeping magazines full? Is it a good idea or not?
Oh yeah. As long as you rotate it out about once a year, really, would you say, or would you?
Yeah, I download all of mine by a couple of rounds. I don't load mine completely full. I've found that loading them completely full can cause a magazine spring to take a set, and you end up with a magazine that's not reliable. So I always download mine by a couple of rounds.
Even your handgun?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, and two, and you may want to top it off if you're going somewhere. I do keep mine full. I don't usually have any issues with it. With AR-15 mags, I definitely keep 28 rounds. It just makes it seat better, for one thing, because if you've got a full magazine and you got the bolt when you're putting it in, sometimes it can kind of, you have to.
Same way with your handgun magazines. A lot of your handgun magazines, if they're loaded completely full, they're much more difficult to seat in the pistol, especially if the slide is closed and the pistol's not completely empty. It's more difficult to load it. So even downloading by a couple of rounds in your handgun does help it with reloads, and I think it does make your springs last longer as well.
But I find that especially with cheaper magazines, if you leave those loaded, they're more susceptible to having problems. Magpul typically does not have a problem. I can load Magpul magazines, at least the AR-15 magazines, and I don't have a problem with them. I have had other brands over time that they would have a lot of problems if you kept them loaded.
I'll tell you one thing that I have found with Magpul magazines is a lot of times you can load 31 rounds instead of 30. But when you load 31 in it, there's no give in that magazine at all. It makes it almost impossible to load it in a bolt forward situation.
Yaz Taz asked, question, in your opinion, what would be a key indicator that is time to leave an urban or highly populated suburban area rather than bugging in? Maybe go to a campground for a while.
Oh, yeah, a campground would probably be a really good idea if you have resources that you can pull from that are not like, if you need to go to the grocery store or go to a small store. I think that's a really good idea. I think one of the things that you start looking at, because typically you'll have an event going on and they'll start amassing into a certain area. And then it'll spread. So early on is probably the best bet. If things start to happen early on, get out then. Go ahead and make your plan. That's one of the things about having this plan is you have a plan set ahead. And so you can move out of that situation.
And what's your local news? What's your national news? Generally, there's going to be a catalyst. Like with George Floyd, there was him being attacked, and then it was the local and the national media talking about it constantly. If you see a catalyst that the local media and the national media pick up on, that's being talked about constantly, that is generally going to be something to key in on, that there could potentially be a civil unrest in your area.
And then them talking about it draws more people into the situation.
Yep.
So now if I'm in an area, in fact, I was talking to a guy this past weekend. We were at the NRA annual meeting, and a good friend of mine, and he lives in New York. And he was saying that in his apartment complex, his apartments where he lives, they were having protests right there in front of his apartment. So, if you're in that area, if you're local to those areas, really close, is again, make a plan. For me, I would make sure that I was out of town that week,
right?
For sure. If you're already in the hot spot before it even starts to spread. So, that's, yeah, I think, we'll camp out. That actually is a pretty good idea. We have a camper. We might do that. Okay.
Rosemary Fry says, this is kind of similar. I have a daughter who is 280 miles away at college. What would your advice be to her in an SHTF situation? This scares me to death.
Kind of the same thing. Watch for catalysts. Watch for things that the local and national media pick up on that could cause there to be civil unrest, whether it's in a large city or at a large university. It may not be a bad idea. Especially, she'll probably still be in school during the elections, so it may not be a bad idea to maybe do some online classes this fall and skip out on going to school this fall. Maybe do some online classes instead of attending.
Do you have any kind of contacts in the area she is?
Right.
If there's an aunt or there's some family friend somewhere it's at least in the general vicinity. That's one thing that you probably would like to kind of key in on, so that she has a place maybe to go, or at least make some thoughts that she could go somewhere, especially with Airbnbs now.
Right.
There are places that could be close by that she could just retreat to and to be able to live.
Or even with her being at school, does she have some friends that have family that live in that immediate area where the school is, that she could go home with them?
Right.
Even if she can't make it 280 miles home, she's got somebody that she's in school with that has family in the immediate area that she could go to their house.
Now, I have a good friend of mine whose son goes to a university not even 30 miles from their house, but 30 miles is a long way if you're on foot. One of the things he did was get him a bicycle and made a plan. In fact, we worked on it, and our house happens to be halfway. So the plan is that if something were to happen, that he gets on this bicycle, starts to head really quickly before things escalate. And then he could get to our house, and then we could get him to his parents' house. So, there again, we have a plan. So 280 miles is, that's a lot. There's a lot in between, but I think there's some things you can do if you're thinking about it now, putting together a plan to where, again, and what Robbie said, if there are people there's some of the students even that have local family or something, I would see about, in a casual way, find out who they are, make sure you're a good friend to them, so they wouldn't mind having you there. But yeah, that is a daunting task, but I think you're really going to need to have some resources in the area she is, and then possibly you can get there to get her.
Julio Cesar says, "Hi guys, as a guy who lives in Brazil, I find it unreasonable to have a bug out vehicle because the first thing protesters will do is burn tires on the highway. So you'll be stuck. How do you prepare for that?"
Listen, bug out in itself means you're a glorified refugee. That is not a good. You're vulnerable. You're out there. Bugging in, being at home is the biggest thing. Now, there's a possibility you just can't stay.
Right.
You just can't stay. But that should really be a last resort into the world. One thing about a bug out vehicle, though, if you have 4-wheel drive, if you're able to use it, if you can get on some trails, I mean, it does give you more options. Now, you may not be able to utilize those options, but it does give you those options.
And one of the big things too is recognizing when there's going to be civil unrest before it actually starts. And if you feel like you do need to get out of the area, get out early. You know, we always talk about the bell curve. You know, when you're on the bottom side of the bell curve, that's your opportunity to be able to leave that area before things ramp up. Once it goes up like this and you're at the top of the bell curve, you've already missed your opportunity. And at that point, you're bugging in and not bugging out. So watch what's going on around you, watch what's going on locally, and bug out ahead of time if you feel like you need to get out of that area. Get out before things ramp up. Once things have already ramped up, you know, you're parking your vehicle inside your garage, you're hiding your vehicle, and you're bugging in at that point.
Right.
Travis asked, what kind of people should you watch out for if SHTF happens?
Well, definitely criminal elements, people that are very ramped up. You know, if I was in a situation where I was in a city and there's some people just kind of stand around watching, they're not really getting involved. Then you have the guys that are like, they want to go all in, you know, their testosterone is rocking. They just want to.
I always laugh. I say it's the blue hairs. It's always going to be the blue hairs.
But there's definitely signs. You know, you can see people that are a little more aggressive, that are pushing, that seem to be pushing the envelope. They're very vocal. They're loud. You want to avoid those people completely. But then
agitators.
Yeah, the agitators, they're the ones that are going to be at the front. So you want to stay away from that, kind of get on the outside. But sometimes you can get caught. Again, avoid eye contact. Use your communication skills by being able to de-escalate and trying to avoid situations as much as possible. You know, if somebody gets violent with you, let them have what they want, which goes completely against my nature. But the thing is especially if I have a family or something, you know, I want to make sure that I'm thinking more about them, or I'm thinking about myself, getting myself home because they need me. So, you know, and it's just like with a prepper group. Watch for people that have big egos. Watch for people that are very quick tempered, or, you know, want to just, you know, and I'll tell you guys in the comments, there'll be people that'll going to go, let's set it off. Let's get it going, you know, and they're a lot of times it's vibrato, but sometimes it's just, they're just a loose cannon. And, you know, you don't want this to happen. You don't want civil war. You may think you do. I mean, when I was in my 20s, I might've went, let's just bring it on, you know? And, but you know, the thing is the death and destruction that happens through that, and then the disease that follows, it is not going to be good. So avoid people that are volatile and just try to just stay away from them because they're going to bring you down. Okay. Well, it's 1 o'clock. So, guys, you know, again, the big thing here is, and we know a lot of the stuff and the issues that are happening. So let's prepare, get yourself in good shape, get yourself to where you're at home. You don't have to worry about anything at that point. You've got your security measures set up. You have your family safe. When that date starts to come up, it gives you a date. And it's one of the things, especially in the prepping world,
Right.
that is something that we don't get a lot.
That's right.
You know, we don't get some telltale signs. So we've got, it's November 5th is when the election happens. It'll be November 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th, or whenever, when they finally get everything, when all the absentee ballots and the fraud happens. And hopefully that there's a lot of states have locked down on a lot of stuff. So we should have a fairer election than we had last time. But I'm still afraid that we're not going to get it.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion. So make sure, though, that you, again, do what you can do. And that's all you can do, is to get yourself prepared, staying at home, making sure your family is secure. Don't go out and do dumb things when it starts to ramp up. And if you need to, find a location that you need to go to. A lot of this stuff is just like with storms. And, you know, the thing is they could attack your utilities, or something could happen with your, you know, it could black out. You could have blackouts. So the normal things you do for a storm where you know you're going to have to stay at home, those are the things you do. And then it just gives you more opportunities. So we really appreciate Sarah Mack for being over and getting the questions to us, monitoring the comments. A big thanks to Robbie Wheaton for being here today. Again, check out the Robbie Wheaton YouTube channel, which we didn't mention before. The link's down below in the description. He does a great job and does prepping and firearms. And again, being a gunsmith for over 20 years. And WheatonArms.com. Check that out. Great source for your Glock aftermarket parts and other things. And you doing a live tonight?
Not doing a live tonight. Now I've got some other projects that I'm working on right now.
Usually he's doing a live on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard, but check it out when you get a chance, when he decides to do it. He's probably working in his garden right now, which we all are. We're working on our gardens and getting ourselves prepared. But also a big thanks to Exotac. You need a fire kit. Fire kits are going to bring you out of the caveman stage. And also you get 20% off using Sootch00 with the link down below in the description. Is it Sootch 20? Excuse me, it's Sootch 20, but the link's down below in the description with the code. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic.